Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses!
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. We warned you we'd be back. Rory spent his few weeks in his Italian bolt hole, and I was doing tours of Wexford and Kilkenny. You know, just all the Leinster hurling strongholds, bar one, of course, which is Westmeath. I'll get to that in a second. We're joined this week.
Viva la split season, Mikey.
Yes, indeed. You do look tanned, Rory. We're joined this week by former intercounty hurling referee Barry Kelly and current club referee Barry Kelly, and also by Marty Coyle, a 21-year-old football referee from County Tyrone. So we're going to have a little chat off the back, obviously, of the incident involving referee Kevin Naughton in Roscommon, just about the current state of refereeing and kind of the challenges facing the organisation and individual referees. So just to say thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. Are you well?
Good, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Mikey.
Thanks, Rory. Good stuff. Barry, I mentioned Westmeath as a Leinster hurling stronghold because for the first time in 36 years, the county has an all-star nominee in forward Killian Doyle, which is great recognition. 36 years since they were last nominated, which is when obviously they won, or one and only all-star David Kilcoyne. I won't say that was a fact I knew before yesterday when I was kind of writing this story up for this morning, but great recognition for Killian, who obviously had a stunning season, one of the top scorers in the championship.
Yeah, brilliant. Like, a gifted hurler and a nice fella, very nice fella to boot actually as well. And he, fabulous wrists and just ability to score points from all kind of angles and distances. Never fails to amaze at club and intercounty level. And it's lovely recognition. Great for the team. Great for Killian himself, his club Raharney. His dad, Michael Doyle, who's put in a lot of work in his coaching over the years, and lots of lads from Raharney. It's great recognition for the Raharney club, great club, and bit unlucky for Tommy Jogger Doyle, no relation, but he's a Collinstown man who had a supreme year as well, and it's lovely. And then good for Joe Forge as well, who has brought a great impetus to Westmeath hurling. And as I said, we were kind of glad to hang on to Joe, and not saying that Joe was looking for another job, but you know, the Dublin job came up for grabs. And no doubt that Joe is very well regarded in Dublin hurling. So just a lovely boost and great recognition for Killian and the Doyle family and Raharney and Westmeath in general. Great.
Yeah. At the other end of the spectrum, Marty, quite the fall for the Tyrone footballers from All Ireland champions to not a single All-Star nominee. But I imagine, knowing Tyrone football in the depths of the club championship at the moment, inter-county issues or lack of All-Star nominations probably aren't really at the forefront of anybody's mind, are they?
Well, it has been a very tough year for Tyrone after such a high, but I'm almost very confident that Fergal and Brian will get the county back to where it should be.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed this year.
Yeah. You're used to winning on All Ireland and then the arse falling out of it the year after. It's kind of what Tyrone have always done for some strange reason. They're not alone in that, but it's always very striking with Tyrone. I'll stick with you, Marty, there for a second, because I think it probably, a lot of people will be quite interested in your entry into refereeing. You know, you're 21 now, you're refereeing championship level in Tyrone, which has just meant, like, you know, people think Tyrone club football is just like, you know, it's one of the most competitive out there. The roll of honour, you know, it's nearly a new club every year, very hard to defend, etc. Great tradition in football in the county. So people will be asking, how the hell did a 19-year-old get into it a couple of years ago? And you might tell us how the role that Peter Ganavan played in your refereeing career.
Yes, I started, if my memory serves me right, I started refereeing just when I turned 17. I was playing minor football still for my club, Far Ox. Still playing until I lost interest in the playing side when I just got fed up, really. And then with my dad also being a referee at the time, I somehow just some chance I went onto Facebook and I seen Tyrone on Facebook. They put up this wee leaflet about refereeing, and then I said to him, I think I should give this a go. And yeah, here I am. still knocking away.
And Peter Canavan was your PE teacher, and he encouraged you to give it a crack, did he?
Yes, he did. Peter, a great teacher of mine for 7 years in Holy Trinity College. I was always getting out of class just to referee games, thanks to him. And I don't know if it sort of helped out in a way as well.
Yeah, well, if God tells you to referee, you have to go and referee, really, don't you?
Yeah, very true.
Barry, how about yourself? What was your introduction to refereeing?
Yeah, it's class, like the similarities. And listen to Marty there. I remember when I was in Leaving Cert, there was a game between two third-year teams, and the two men in charge of each team somehow picked me to referee this game. I was, 17, 18, and refereed the game, just a kind of an inter-class or inter-school thing, inter-class thing. And but again, I suppose, an interesting Marty mentioned there about his dad, and it's reasonably well noticed. My dad umpired for Paddy Collins for a good number of years, and I went with them to various matches at 6, 7 years of age. I'm sure they really didn't appreciate another cars back then, and probably not as big as cars today and so on, but 5 men and a young fella. Like I remember going to, you'd probably be arrested today, you'd have Tusla called to the house today, but I remember going to the Leinster football final with Meath and Dublin in about 1976. I was 6, and Daddy picked out some woman in the stand. They were sitting watching the minor game, and said, I'm going down to umpire and just keep an eye on that young fella. And off he went. And I was happy out because I could see him. Like the fact he was 125 metres away. And so that was kind of my background to it in a way. And then I used to do the line in Cusack Park, and Paddy Collins would be a good friend of the family. And that's kind of, so maybe there's almost an element of, like Marty, like kind of hereditary. It's in the genes in a way, and you're used to, and then obviously I picked up hurling, but that was kind of just a stroke of luck because I was doing both, but there was a shortage of hurling referees more than football. So I was told, after doing a course in Portlaoise years ago, we did the same course for football and hurling. Then they came to the exam, and I think the late Tony Jordan was a very good mentor of mine. And Tony came round and he said, "Are you Barry Kelly?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're doing the hurling exam." I said, "Okay, grand." Probably a stroke of luck too, Mikey and Rory, because there was about to become a kind of a gap in the hurling, really. Like the likes of Ger Harrington, Dickey, Sean McMahon, Pat O'Connor, Pat Horn were well established, but after them there was a bit of a gap, and I was lucky enough to be able to kind of half fill that gap. But yeah, so like, it's kind of maybe a link to hereditary, or it's in the genes or something.
Yeah.
How many All-Ireland finals? How many All-Ireland finals did you do, Barry?
4, Rory. Yeah,
4. Fair play.
Yeah.
So Rory, I suppose the other way into it is almost the guilt way, I think, which is quite common around Ireland because every club has to contribute a referee, or at least that's the thinking. You, Rory, being chairman, secretary, general dog's body, St. Pat's up there for a while now. How do you find that process?
Well, that's a very good question. The very beginning of this year, there was a clarion call went out from the county board to say if each club didn't contribute a referee, it could impact on your fixtures and your ability to fulfill fixtures, which scared the pants off me, I'll be honest, because we had a ref. We had a very, very good one, actually. Was it Robbie Farrell was his name? He was, I didn't know, did he make it all the ways up to Intercounty? We have a good lad now in the club at the minute, but he's not originally from our club. He's living in the area as Gary McCormack. He's be well established on the Dublin club scene. Barry might know Gary.
I know Gary,
yeah. So,
good referee, yeah. No,
so look, the reality is it's still, even at underage level, it's still a very, very difficult job to try and convince people to do. I mean, I'll give you a quick story. Last week, we ran the street leagues, which we call the mini All-Irelands in the club. Now, I was heavily involved in the administration of it. I must have put in 40 hours last week. Don't tell the boss. But So yeah, it was like 4 or 5 hours, and then all day every day, and then all day Saturday in the lashings of rain. But we got a complaint in the middle of the week from a couple of the referees in the junior boys section. This was under eights, right? And a couple of complaints in from the referees who were in their teenage ranks. Like the referees themselves were only boys and girls of 14, 15, because, you know, it's pretty simple enough to referee at that level. One hop, one solo, and just move the ball on. And they got a couple of complaints in saying that they're not going to do that particular section again because they were getting abuse. And I was just dumbfounded. I just could.
Sorry, from players or parents?
Well, when I went to tackle it, what I said was, I don't actually care whether it was parents, coaches, players, or whoever. I just thought it was embarrassing and pathetic. I mean, underage street leagues. I mean, what are you at when that's the kind of like? And I suppose it comes back to the culture. And I know certain commentators in the media have been writing about it. I just find the whole thing abhorrent. I mean, like, as if somebody in there refereeing a game at that level, firstly, cares who wins or loses. They don't actually care who wins or loses. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's a very, very difficult thing to tackle from a club perspective. I think it's not getting any easier. We saw at the beginning of this season a whole host of county boards putting out the clarion call on all their social media accounts to try and encourage recruitment. The problem is probably being exacerbated now, and I don't think the situations that surrounded that incident in Roscommon help matters at all.
Yeah. On that, Marty, to you first. I was wondering, what was your reaction when you saw the story about Kevin Naughton in Roscommon and what happened to him?
When I first heard about it, I was like, I felt numb to hear that a referee gets assaulted on a football pitch. You can't get words out.
It's disgraceful. Like, it's utterly despicable and disgraceful is what it is, isn't it?
Yep. For a volunteer as well, which Kevin still is, and just to be assaulted by your fella is just despicable.
Yeah, we do still have to say alleged assault, because at this stage we don't know whether there will be. Yeah, no, don't worry, that's my job. We don't know whether there will be any kind of criminal charges here. We don't know what's going to happen at this stage. Not a lot done. Barry, as I said rather gauchily before we started, you've been around the block a few more times than Marty. You've probably experienced a bit of this yourself in your time. I don't know to what level, but what was your own reaction when you heard about the Roscommon?
Yeah. Like, obviously, again, echo what Marty said, and again, send best wishes to Kevin, who I don't know Kevin, but you know, I know lads in Roscommon, and you know, good fella, and you know, and it's not even a question, like, no point in saying like he's a good referee or whatever. Like, that's almost like saying that it shouldn't happen because he's a good referee. It shouldn't happen because he's a referee, and Rory can't do it.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like, I've been lucky. I'm refereeing about this day about 28, 29 years, maybe for close to 30 years. I wasn't as young as Marty starting out, but I wasn't too far away from it. And like, never had, thankfully, touch wood, never had that level of, you know, aggression in terms of physically. You know, obviously plenty of comments passed, but it really is, though. It's, I mean, that thing that Rory mentioned, under eights, like, I mean, that's mind-boggling. And you asked, was it the players or the parents? And Rory said, obviously, it didn't matter, and he's right. But I'd say invariably it is the parents, and then it's fed into the kids. Then kids don't behave like that. Like, kids referee games on greens across the country, and referee them fairly among themselves, like, since Moses was a child. Like, it's not, you know, it's a parental thing, and it's a societal thing, really. Like, I refereed a game the other night, under 19. And a young fella from one of the clubs involved, and there were 3 points down with 7 minutes to go. And he just said to me, Barry, he said, I need treatment. I'm after getting knocked to his leg. And I said, yeah, no problem, actually. And I stopped the play. But literally, I just indicated the physio to come on. But the physio had not set a foot on the pitch when some guy in the stand was bellowing. I mean, bellowing. It's not a head injury, ref. Get on with it. And I was like, the Gosling is allowed to be treated. He wasn't killing time. They were losing. Like, it wasn't his interest. He needed some kind of attention to his leg. And I didn't delay long. Like, I mean, physically, come on. 15,
and it's not the young
seconds.
fella's nature to ask the referee to stop a match to get treatment either. That's we're not talking about Premier League footballers here trying to buy time.
It wasn't like they just conceded a goal and they went down to tactically, let's buy a timeout here. This wasn't. It wasn't his interest. But the guy in the stand just automatically. I mean, he hadn't gone to his knee to get treatment, and suddenly the guy roaring in like, and it is completely societal in terms of. There's just, and I said this repeatedly, like, there is just no allowance made for the referee to make a mistake. And we don't roar at players who make mistakes. Like, every player makes lots of mistakes. David Clifford makes mistakes, kicks wides, and you don't see the Kerry fans turning on him. And it's just there's absolutely zero allowance made for. We expect perfection, and it's so. And Rory mentioned there, and I know you mentioned jokingly about the split season and holidays and so on. Like, with the growth in LGFA, and there is a complete dearth of ladies refereeing matches. Like, certainly in Westmeath, I don't think we've any, or if we have, there's very, very few. So it's a crossover now in terms of camogie, LGFA, underage, football, hurling, split season. It has impacted even more so now in that there's huge pressure because the majority of games are played now between, say, June and obviously October. And you just haven't got enough. Well, we're getting by, but if a few guys in Westmeath stopped refereeing, 3 or 4 guys in particular stopped, it would cause a huge backlog because there's just not people to take their places. And we have the average age of referees in Westmeath, and hazardly guess is probably very close to 50 years of age. So going forward, that's not sustainable.
And what's the cutoff point, Barry? At what age do you have to stop, or do you not have to?
Well,
at club level, can you keep going till?
Yeah, a lovely man called John Joe Brady, and from Milltown Pass, and he refereed the Westmeath County Football Final Senior in 1972, and I saw him refereeing recently. And John Joe is in his 70s. In his 70s, and
that's a great story. We'd have to get John Joe on.
there is no. I know intercounty obviously is 50, but there is no cutoff.
There's no cutoff.
You got 50 years ahead of you, Marty. 50 years ahead of you.
But Mikey, I think Barry makes a really key point there as well in terms of the societal aspect to this, and I think in a post-COVID world, I think society in general is a little crankier. I think there's a level of stress that was added to the entire COVID thing. It was kind of a low level of stress right across society, which has made people more cantankerous, more impatient. I think if you double that down and you couple that up with the level of online abuse and how much people can get away with and in that environment as well, I think it's kind of fed into a sort of a culture whereby people feel that they can say and do whatever they like at this point, because I think it's just, again, to go back to Barry's point, it is a societal thing, and that's a very big oil tanker to turn around in terms of people's attitudes and behaviors, and that's going to be really, really tricky thing for the GAA to manage.
Yeah, I don't know, just come to you a second, but I almost find the opposite. From a personal point of view, Rory, I'm just so happy to be going out to games now that actually the results, well, of course it matters, but like I feel a kind of a freedom when you go to a match now, and it's kind of a release. But I suppose, Marty, you're refereeing almost entirely in the last few years in the COVID era. I'm just wondering, I'm hoping you've never experienced anything along the lines of what happened in Roscommon, but what have been your, let's start just with the negative experiences, sorry, just because we're kind of talking about Roscommon here. Like, what have you, I suppose, the verbal abuse, as that study from Ulster University recently said, that's kind of a given. 94% have experienced that. They say 23% have experienced physical abuse. What's kind of the worst thing you've experienced yourself?
Worst thing, it was the one I can remember vividly is this was the minor final I refereed a couple of weeks ago between Donegal and English, and it was a very, very great game of football between 2 great teams, and I think this was after extra time, after the game finished, I'm with my linesmen, my umpires, and then a fella from Donegal, he just walked up to me and he said, "You should hang up your whistle." And I was like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to walk away. But
you should have done, Marty, is you should have handed it to him and say, well, you know what? If you want me to hang up my whistle, here, why don't you have a go if you can do a better job?
Yep.
Cormac Riley had one there recently, the Irish Times, interviewed by
Gordon Manning, I think, yeah.
Cormac did a match recently, and Cormac, a very experienced official and a very sound fella, and some guy approached him and he could hear him coming in a way. He was loud and he was about to berate him and began to berate him, and Cormac turned around and just said to him, "Can I have your name and phone number?" And that generally stopped the lad in his tracks anyhow for a start. And then suddenly Cormac said to him, because referee's course in Nav in about 3 weeks' time, I want to put your name forward first. And now that might always work, but can I just say, Mikey, as well though, in my experience, now look, I'm not saying my experience is everyone, far from it, but players by and large are fine. The majority of players, like I'm in charge of underage team, I'm involved, my own lads play, go to lots and lots of matches, referee lots of matches. Like the other night, that match, under 19 match, St. Lomans and Moat, a very competitive game. Like, I honestly don't think any player spoke in a negative or questioning. Maybe one player did. I played advantage and it didn't accrue for him. The 5 seconds were gone, but I explained to him, like, and then I was fine. But it's not, the players are by and large fine. It is the lads on the sideline, obviously mentors in particular, and then the crowd in a way, and that's obviously, kind of Rory mentioned this as well, is that's nearly a bigger in that. How do you solve that? Like, how do you get around? How do you stop people? Like, they're going to tell you very quickly, you've no jurisdiction outside the 4 white lines, so therefore he can show what he wants in a way. Even clubs are probably pop a lad, going to matches, or half these people aren't even members of clubs, and yet they feel they can just. I did like Kieran Shannon's suggestion recently in the Examiner after the Roscommon referees withdrew their services, and he was saying, Kieran Shannon, that if there was a national withdrawal by referees over some weekend in the next 3 or 4 weeks, when, as you know, every single county of the next 3 or 4 weeks has a plethora of big games. Yeah. And if you had people like in the GA world, which is a huge community, if you had people on a Friday evening and Saturday and Sunday with no match to go to, that would really focus the minds. That would really, now, mightn't work, and I'm not advocating it, but I thought Kieran Shannon's idea was, I know I'd be lost myself if there was no match to go to this weekend, and whether I'm refereeing or not. Yeah. But like, if you had that across the country as regards, might make people think, don't think much of these lads, but this does show they're pretty valuable or pretty intrinsic to the whole operation.
Yeah, because I get to it. Well, now I suppose good times. We do seem to me, Rory. It seems to be it's a cultural thing. I'm onto my third club in my GAA career, storied, medal-laden GAA career. Timon Cameras was the club I played with as a child and as a teenager until I went away to college. Then I played a few years ago for Portobello in a very low level Dublin junior football, and now I play for Greystones in junior hurling. Every one of those clubs, when you're on the sideline, everyone will at some point say, referees never give us anything. We're like, it seems I've been very unlucky. I've played for 3 black sheep clubs in my time, Timon Cameras, Portobello and Greystones. The 3 of them are on a blacklist with GAAs in the counties of Wexford, Dublin and Wicklow, and they never get a fair shake of it. But I think I'll be shocked to hear now, Rory, that there's probably a considerable contingent in St. Pat's and probably down in Nemo who probably used to say the exact same thing. There's this idea out there among GA people that, Marty and Barry there are out to screw them and there's nothing you can do about it.
No, we like even last weekend we played Plunkets in a sort of a winner takes all. No, as luck would have it, we qualified anyway, and we're playing Vincent's in the quarterfinal of the Senior 2 Championship, because Vincent's got relegated from Senior 1 last year. That's in a couple of weeks' time, and a big game for the club to look forward to, and we look forward to it. But, Yeah, we lost by a point out in Plunkett's, and of course the narrative afterwards was the ref gave us nothing. Well, it's just not true. Like, I mean, you can see, like, if you can take off the blinkers, you can see this no matter what games you go to. By and large, referees, as far as I can see, they don't care who wins or loses. They don't. Like, they're there as neutral observers. A lot of the time, they're on, a bit of an unfortunate aspect, because they can have both sides shouting in, and when you don't have umpires and you don't have linesmen with you, it can be a lonely, and it can be an intimidating environment at times. And I don't know how you get over that. Again, I mean, recruitment for referees alone is difficult, let alone to try and supply them with umpires and linesmen or lineswomen, as the case may be. But there is that perception out there that the ref gave us nothing and all. To my mind, it's such a sort of a junior mentality at this stage, and it's a really infantile, juvenile way to look at things. Sort your own house out. If you're beaten, by and large, it's never the referee's fault. It's your own fault. You were either not good enough or you didn't play well enough on the day. I think Barry made one very key point there, and woe be it for me to push the gender card here, but that's something that I would find a little bit, I'd say, disconcerting or alarming. But I do think more women need to be encouraged to come into it and need to take it up. It's 50% of the population. And I would say if you were to look at the amount of women that are currently doing the role, it's probably very, very small in percentage terms. It might only be less than 1%. That definitely is a target market that the GAA need to go after if they want to improve recruitment and try and boost numbers.
Yeah. Marty, I'm getting the impression from you that your experience of refereeing is largely positive, and which is a great thing to hear. Kind of culturally, I suppose one thing I'll get on to Barry with soon, because he's obviously more experienced of it at a very high level, but the idea of the appeals process and the idea that once you've put in your report, that's basically, you're done. You don't have any more input into a disciplinary procedure. And as we know, at intercounty level and at club level, the ability to get a red card or a suspension overturned it's very prominent. It's unlike other sports. It seems you are almost more likely than not to succeed with an appeal in the GAA. Is that something that you've come up against? Is that a frustration for you that perhaps somebody does something on the pitch, you say, that was a red card all day long, I got that decision right, and next thing you see, he's eligible to play in a game the next week, or any instance like that for you?
I have sent a few people off, and
people get sent off in Tyrone.
Well,
never mind him, Marty.
I just on that. Obviously, with the appeals, all referees have to do is just report. All you have to do is just write down by rule what you've seen and why, and obviously the red card. You just put it on the red card section. That's all you can do. Obviously, appeals, we've nothing to do with that. And with, say, if you do see a player that you do sent off playing the week after, as you said, Mikey, it can be mind-boggling in a way to figure out how that appeal got overturned. Obviously, I don't tend to know if the player is going to be playing next week or the week after. I just write down by rule what I see, and hopefully
the appeals process probably is too convoluted, though, and maybe does need to be simplified. But I think there's an onus on everybody. I think right across the board, and I don't know how the two lads feel about this, but I think the media plays a part. Like, by and large, when I got involved in the Sunday game, I tried to reduce the amount of ref bashing because I thought it just served no purpose. But I do see it still quite a lot in British TV, Sky and BBC, for instance. They do tend to get into it. Now, look, I suppose they can probably afford to go down that road a little bit more in soccer and professional sports because the referees are professionals themselves. Isn't that correct, Barry? Would that be fair?
Yeah, no, I I think the average Premiership referee is probably, including expenses, it's maybe over 150 grand a year.
I think it's
like,
150 grand a year. Yeah.
Like
So I suppose, look, maybe there is a higher bar whereby they can be held to adjudication. But I do think everybody, like the LGFA, the media, the governing bodies themselves, the GAA, supporters, players, parents, it's a massive melting pot, a massive cultural melting pot that needs a mind shift change. And that's going to be difficult.
And the building block there, Barry, and this is something I think you mentioned on the championship with Damien Lawler during the summer, when the disciplinary system at intercounty level was really in the spotlight. And you made the very valid point, which few people have made now, that most county boards speak out of both sides of their mouth, because on the one hand, at intercounty level, they're trying to get somebody off, and on the other hand, they're judge and jury for club matches, and they're supposed to be the keepers of the rule book. And this kind of this contradiction, I think, is one of that, and as Rory says, the media, which is a fair point. I think they're the two biggest issues we have in terms of discipline, personally.
I work in a secondary school in Mullingar, and it'd be like the principal catching a kid smoking behind the trees on down the avenue, and yet he himself goes round the back of the school and has a quick sneaky cigarette. So it's double standards completely. That doesn't happen in our place, by the way, just to mention. The principal, in case he's listening, he's probably wondering why I'm not in class at the moment. But yeah, but yeah, the other thing too, it'll be interesting over the next few weeks, how many players who'll get a straight red card in a county championship semi-final will actually miss the county final. Now, I wouldn't like to, I would say very, very few. Like the whole appeal system, and I know Marty there, and he's obviously younger and maybe you could say more naive, but there was a point made previously that, oh no, you just referee the game, don't worry about the appeals. But I mean, that doesn't stand up in the sense that you are being undermined. You do take it personally. You do take it as a reflection that you got a decision wrong, or something. Someone thinks you got it wrong at county board level or higher up. And I do think, I mean, in other sports, mentioned before, like there's just, Johnny Sexton gets a straight red card next October in the World Cup semi-final. He has virtually no chance of playing in the final if Ireland get to the final. None. It won't matter if he's about to retire and he's been a great servant. He will not play in the World Cup final. That's virtually certain. That is not the case in the GAA. Guy will not miss a county final or an All-Ireland final. I mean, at this stage, it's getting a bit boring in the sense that we keep going back to John Milan took his medicine. That's 18 years ago. Yeah. It's 18 years ago. How come no one else has taken the medicine since? Darragh O'Shea got sent off below in Kerry before the 2002 football final, I think, and it became a double yellow, or he played at the time when bans kind of were different. You covered all matches at the time, and there's been a load more since. Like, it should be very simple, and it's far too heavily skewed in favour of the lad who gets sent off. Like, it's just not right, and I don't think it helps. Referees themselves will be very angry about it. Umpires feel very strongly about it. You report something in good faith, as Rory said. You've nothing against the guy who got sent off. There's no one saying he's a dirty player. Like, you get caught speeding down the road at 65k an hour in the 50k zone. The guard is not saying you're a bad driver, but you're caught that day. That's it. Like, you're not a bad driver, but you're caught. You're wrong, and you're not a dirty player. Yeah, but you pulled a red card offence. You're gone.
How important, lads, would you think communication is on the field? The reason I ask is because I was lucky enough there for the past couple of All-Ireland finals and semi-finals where the GAA gave us access to the RefLink. So I was able to hear, now they withdrew the service this year, and I think on the back of what happened between Armagh and Galway and the full-time whistle. So you can kind of understand why maybe they wanted to withdraw it on that occasion. But up until then, we were able to listen. And I like the first thing that was very noticeable to me was how Ofé and Top Class, they were communicating to the players, how on top of it, how they were communicating to each other, communicating to linesmen, anything behind me that I need to see, anything going on down that end. This was all really well done. Even the interaction with the players, and Barry made a point earlier on about how players themselves generally are fine. I mean, when I was listening to some of the county players and some of the stars of the game, and it was utter respect. Like they might question a decision, but it was done in why? What was that for?
Yeah.
And so is communication on the field essential, do you think? And then the second part to that question is, do we think if the public got access to this and could actually see and hear how a game is refereed in the mechanics of it by the referee themselves, would it lend to a better understanding by the general public and reduce some of the bullshit that we see, like what happened in Roscommon?
Yeah, I won't dominate this completely, but the communication, yes, of course, but it just that with the number of referees you need, like some people, they're more taciturn by nature and more reticent and just, in their jobs, or they might be dealing with people. I'm lucky, I suppose, in the sense that I'm a teacher, your communication is regarded as reasonably important in my job. So you're used to dealing with young people and chatting to people. Other people wouldn't be that comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
And not at the highest level, obviously, yes. But the problem is that, the lowest common denominator is the lad referee in the junior D match. And then the referee who's, not that experienced or just, doing a favour for his club and, maybe feels that if I'm questioned by a player that I'm being undermined. And so that's difficult to kind of, I think it'd be no harm if people heard what the public heard what at the top level, what players say, how they interact. But that wouldn't necessarily reflect what goes on maybe at the lowest level.
Yeah.
The very last thing, Mikey, in this talk is that, and this is now, it's a compliment in many ways, is that people in the GAA world, unfortunately, and I say that word probably ill-advisedly, care so much. Their club, and you've had many clubs, Mikey, but their club, your local team, you're so heavily invested in it and you want them to win. It means so much to the parish. It means so much. And then obviously it brings emotions into it. And you want to see your team winning. And people care, which is brilliant in the sense that GAA is such an intrinsic part of Irish life. But sometimes, or quite often, they care so much that they lose the ability to be rational and to normal people are suddenly like behaving in a way that if they were caught on camera, they'd be like, oh my God, I really didn't realize I did that. But like, it is part of the culture that we are so passionate about our local teams and it's more so even clubs than counties. The majority of people really want their club to win. That's what it really boils down to. You asked Rory, Nemo to win the Club All Ireland or Cork to win the Football All Ireland. Which is it, Rory?
Well, that's a tough one. Because we don't win that many Football All Irelands at inter-county level.
Half being facetious, but
that would be a tough one. I'd probably go with Nemo.
Yeah, of course you would.
And you wouldn't be alone in that. Mikey, you got a tough one there because you have 3 counties and 3 clubs to pick from.
I know, yeah. You have to come back to that one.
Could I ask one more question? Sorry, Mikey. And I'm just curious on this. Is the remuneration satisfactory, do we think, in terms of being attractive for recruitment purposes? I mean, in €20 from each team and then maybe a little bit of expenses on top. Is that enough, considering the pressures attached to the job and as we know, the amount of abuse that you have to take?
Marty, are you well enough paid?
Yeah, I feel that obviously with Tyrone, you get all money at Christmas.
All right.
Check into the bank. We would always meet up for a massive Christmas dinner. We would get our presentations for what final we done.
Very good.
Through the season. So I know it's a lot different up in the north here.
Yeah.
But
so it's like a Christmas club for you. It's like a savings thing for you.
A big bonus.
Yeah.
It's probably done differently in every county, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but in Westmeath, your championship matches, senior in particular, and some underage are paid by the county board. And again, same idea, paid into your account at Christmas. It's other that league matches and underage championship matches are paid by the club as you go along. Like on that, Rory, it's a good question. I think in Westmeath it's 50 for an adult game and it's 40 for underage game. And I would think that it's very decent, to be honest. And I'd be wary about increasing it because then you're going to attract people for the wrong reason. Like, and people doing it. People doing it for the money reason, the money element of it is just like in anything really. You've anyone in a job and they're only in for the money. It can cause problems. I would think very few referees in Westmeath or any county are complaining about the money you get. You might complain sometimes you'll get paid by a club, and that happens all the time as well.
Yeah.
But like by and large, most clubs pay. And I don't think it would attract, if you increase the €70 for an adult game and 50 underage, you might just attract people for the wrong reasons.
Okay. Just to go back to the communication question Rory asked her, because Marty, I'd be interested for you because, you know, you were a teenager, you're still, you know, a young man refereeing, you know, men in their 30s and 40s, and they might look at you as like, you know, who's this chap, you know, with the whistle. I would imagine for you, communication, well, I'd say for any referee, communication is your absolute number one tool, but I'd say for you, it was kind of all you had starting out. So I would imagine that the way you communicate with players, the way you talk to them, the way you explain things is more important to you than anything else.
Absolutely. Always getting the point across to a player to say what the free kick is for, I think is 100% key. And then the players respect it in a way. But as I'm pretty sure Barry said, players are 100%. They normally don't react in a way that you would find, can't get the word, it's
aggressive or kind of anyway negative.
Yeah.
Players aren't the issue, really.
No, by and large they're not. Yeah. Mikey, I'm curious though, before we finish off, I'm curious. Well, I'm not really curious because I think we know the answer. I'd say Cork won that under-8 tournament. Would you?
They did actually.
I know well.
Believe it or not, yeah. And I was
they had the biggest team. 11-year-olds.
All the best players, they certainly did.
Yeah, and you got the right referees on their games too, didn't you?
Yeah. No, they did. Jace, that's a gas one. They actually did.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Surprise there.
So, lads, thanks very much for joining us. I suppose the next question is, Marty, when are you out next? What are you refereeing next?
Well, it's the junior championship starts this Sunday. I am doing the line in one of the double headers on Sunday.
Rightio. And you, Barry, where are you out next?
No, I'm not nothing fixed at the moment, Rory or Mikey. No, this weekend is into quarterfinals of Championship and just don't happen to be out. And but again, that Marty mentioned there, great learning point for referees is doing the line for experienced older referees, or even doing umpire. You learn so much by, you know, listening to what goes on, even the dressing room beforehand, a bit of banter, and you know, referee comes in and got a bit of stick, and you realise, God, even the experienced guys get stick, and how you deal with it, and that's a really crucial learning point that you get people to give a hand to even do the line. And Rory mentioned earlier, you go to an under-13 match and you didn't really have to beg people to do umpire or do line. Like
I enjoy doing the umpire. I do umpire quite a bit. I actually enjoy it. It can be quite a eye-opening experience.
There you go, lads. If you're short any weekend, you have a willing accomplice. We'll get him a white coat. He'd be grand. Well, look, I really enjoyed this chat, and I have to say I'm glad to hear that we've got two referees, one halfway through his career, judging by John Joe's experience, and one starting out in his career, and you both enjoy it, and you both have good things to say about it, and it's nice to hear that. We don't pretend there aren't issues with refereeing, obviously, and that was highlighted last week, and I think we've gone through a lot of them there, but it's nice to know that, you know, you enjoy doing it. It's not a penance, it's not like a chore, it's something you like doing, and hopefully this podcast will have encouraged a few more people to sign up. Honestly, I do it myself, but I'm still playing, and I've got young children, and I have a list of excuses as long as my arm. But Rory sounds like a budding referee. We have him on the hook, lads.
Too busy now with the, you know. Actually, one final story there was actually really funny, Barry. I was talking to Desi Dolan once upon a time, and he was saying you were refereeing him in a club championship match, because you do football as well, as we know. Gary Castle, I think, is Desi's club.
Yeah.
And you gave a decision anyway against Gary Castle, and Desi came running out, you know. shouting and roaring at you, you were quick enough to tell him to pipe down and finished it off by saying, "You're not in the Sunday game now, pal."
Can't deny it. Maybe I was jealous you was getting more Sunday game gigs than I was. Actually, can we finish off, lads? I don't know Kevin at all, but I know I appreciate Kevin is recovering and has recovered and all that, but just would pass on best wishes. Like, every referee would echo that, I'm sure, and you'd hope in a way that that we're not doing a podcast like this, or maybe we are in 6 months' time, where we have seen a significant improvement or a significant level
behaviors.
Like you're still going to get lads shouting at you. You're not going to cure that overnight, or maybe ever. And if the worst became was people shouting at you, I think we could deal with that. It's when it goes beyond that and people are confronted, or even like the one that Marty had, hang up your whistle, telling a 21-year-old to hang up his whistle, like, it's just, and like even that, look, he wasn't abusive as such. He wasn't, if we could improve that aspect. So just pass on best wishes to Kevin, and thanks very much, lads.
Thanks very much to you both, lads, and myself and Rory will be back next week, and we will chat to you then. Good luck. Thank you. Goodbye.
How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.